Lords, I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name.
My Lords, decisions on council tax levels are for local authorities, although the government maintains referendum thresholds to allow voters in England to have the final say on any excessive increases. Authorities have set their council tax for the next financial year, and on the 27th of March the government will publish the national statistics.
My Lord, it's amazing that most councils set it at the level set by the government. Is it not the case that council tax levels in England are coming out at, on an average, 4.5% increases? And I declare an interest as a councillor, a borough councillor in Cone, where in the town of Cone the increase is 6% across the board. Local authorities are being hollowed out, their services are being slashed, and in many areas they are teetering on the edge of an existential crisis. Will the government, will the Conservative Party go to the elections this year and tell people, vote Conservative, get less, pay more?
My Lords, the calculation is almost certainly going to be, when the national statistics are published, that the level is 4.8%, but we can't be absolutely certain about that. My Lords, local authorities, of course, do have the option of going to their electorate and seeking a higher level of council tax. The fact they don't do so, I think, is indicative, my Lords, of the fact they know what the result would be.
Yeah. My Lords, I draw the attention of the House to my relevant interest as a Vice President of the LGA. Can the Noble Lord explain to the House the policy idea behind shifting the burden of local government further from central government and more onto the council taxpayer?
My Lords, the government at the moment, as the Noble Lord will know, is looking at a fair funding formula, which, if I trail the next question, but that is not transferring a burden. It is ensuring that we have equity across the piece. It isn't making the cake any larger. It's ensuring that there is fairness, as the Noble Lord will know. The levels of council tax contributing to local authorities varies enormously, 84% in Surrey and Buckinghamshire, 20% in the City of London. That is something that we're not seeking to address, although it is something that may look innately unfair. I think closer attention will show that it isn't, my Lords.
Could I ask the Minister to explain to me, because I've never understood it, why a property outside London, in Oxfordshire I'm talking about, small family home we've had for many years there, and the amount of council tax payable is more than twice that of in Westminster in London, and I never understand why.
My Lords, without knowing of the particular circumstances that my noble friend refers to, I once again say that the fair funding formula will be something that will look at this and seek to address any innate unfairness that there exists between different authorities, though even within London, my Lords, there are massive differences.
Very much in mind the difficulties local authorities have in meeting the needs of hard-working, low-income families in terms of essential support for their children to do well. Will he seek to look again at what can be done to support these families, for instance, by investing and making a further commitment to the Troubled Families Initiative, which has been so beneficial?
My Lords, I very much agree with the Noble Lord about the Troubled Families programme. It is a very, very good programme, as he rightly says. My Lords, in looking at resources and looking at needs, we are seeking to ensure that across the board there is fairness. That's why it is a fair funding formula, and as I say, my Lords, that is something that will be forthcoming in 2020.
The reasons why the council tax is so low in Westminster, the fact that it has huge parking revenues gained from people coming into London from all over the country.
Good.
The Noble Lord does raise a very relevant factor about parking revenues, not simply, of course, in Westminster. That is true in other parts of London and indeed in other cities, and it is something that is being considered in that fair funding review, which is the subject of the next question.
My Lords, I declare my interest as a Vice Chairman of the Local Government Association and also as the ex-leader of Westminster Council. Would the Noble Lord agree with me that it goes far deeper than parking revenues, which have to be ring-fenced for spending on roads? that Westminster has in fact got a low council tax because it's extremely efficient. It also has 1 million visitors a day into Westminster, for which we receive no revenue whatsoever from government, and the cost of which far exceeds those parking revenues. And actually the council tax in Westminster is about half, I can't be sure of my exact figures, about half of that in Camden and Brent, despite the fact that Westminster has 4 of the most deprived wards in the country.
My Lords, the noble lady packs a powerful punch for Westminster, but I've got no desire to get dragged into a discussion about the relative merits of all the local authorities in England, or indeed more widely. That is something that will be looked at, is being looked at in the review, my Lords.
Could you explain something that...
This side.
In other words, could you explain something that has long...
Keep going.
My Lords, could you explain something...
Keep going.
Something to me that has long puzzled me. I worked for many years running the London Food Board. In that time, I found that only 5 boroughs in London supplied Meals on Wheels. So this was because of council cutbacks, and they said they couldn't afford to do this, and that also older people tended not to complain. So the consequence was that we saved, or council saved, let's say 15 quid a day, and then people ended up in high dependency beds from which they could not return. So the saving made by the council was transferred to the NHS. Surely this is crazy.
My Lords, the noble lady references a very, very valuable service, which I happily endorse and agree with the point she makes about the cost elsewhere if such a service isn't provided. And no doubt that's something that should be borne in mind by local authorities and more widely, my Lords.
Lords, as a result of government policy, councils which have social services responsibilities have had to raise their council tax by 18% over the last 4 years. Does the noble Lord the Minister know of any employees who have had an 18% pay rise in that period? And if not, then are they still the hard-pressed council taxpayers that the Conservatives love to talk about?
The lady should know that the level of council tax increases since 2010 has been running at lower than the rate of inflation, judged by CPI. That wasn't the case in the previous decade, my Lord, so the noble lady should look at those figures, I think.
There's one part of the United Kingdom where council tax cuts have been even greater than in England, and that's in Scotland, where the SNP have imposed swingeing cuts far greater than in England on local councils. What message does the Minister have for Nicola Sturgeon?
My Lords, I suspect it's one of the few topics where the noble Lord and I will be in total agreement, so I very much endorse the spirit of the question he asked, and would very gladly seek to discuss it with him later as to what we can do.
Baroness Thornhill.
I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper and declare my interest as the Vice President of the Local Government Association.
My Lords, we are making good progress on the development of a fair funding formula that aims to provide a simple and transparent link between local authority relative needs and resources and available funding.
Thank the noble Lord for his answer, but can I say the sooner the better, please? As this is the biggest change to local government funding in a generation, does the Minister agree that factors like levels of deprivation are highly significant drivers of spending need in a local council's budget? So could the Minister explain why deprivation is not given any prominence in the new funding formula, and therefore how will areas of greatest need and the highest levels of deprivation be funded in the future?
My Lords, the noble lady is right about the importance of deprivation, but she's wrong about the fact that we haven't yet issued the policy because it's been out for consultation until the 21st of February, I think, as the noble lady will know, and we're now considering the responses. But even in that consultation, we recognise the importance of deprivation in relation to adult social services, for example, children's social services, fire and rescue services, and also public health. So the noble lady makes a powerful point, but it is recognised and it's still out for consultation.
Further House to my relevant... Oh, please.
Go on. But would the noble Lord the Minister, for whom I have a great deal of time, actually admit to the House that it's impossible to have a fair funding formula if you're only dealing with the specific grants that he's outlined in his answer this morning, plus the business rate arrangements that are now being put in place, and with the removal of the revenue support grant, it is impossible to have the distribution that he's just referred to.
My Lords, I thank the noble Lord very much for those kind comments. My Lords, in relation to the redistributive element that the noble Lord was referencing, of course that will be done through the business rate retention scheme, which will become live at the same time in 2020. I very much agree with him about the needs to bear in mind government grants as well, of which there are many in addition to the local government settlement, and many programmes like Future High Streets, Coastal Communities, the Stronger Towns Fund and so on that we've seen recently, my Lords.
My Lords, as part of fair funding, does the Government intend to recommend the solution that Cardiff City Council have put in place, which is 150% council tax on empty properties to push up occupancy, particularly where there is a shortage of rental properties?
The noble lady raises an important point, but she should be aware that we already have a procedure where it can go up to 300% premium, which was introduced by this government very recently, my Lords.
My Lords, I declare my interest in the register as the chair of a social care provider. Adult social care accounts for over 40% of local authority budgets, and that number is rising. Yet without the production of the Adult Social Care Green Paper, which has been repeatedly delayed, how can the government look at fair funding from a holistic perspective, and how can providers plan?
The noble lady has a very valid point about the importance of the forthcoming nature of that paper on social care, which I hope will be soon. She will be aware that, of course, we have made special provision for adult social care precepts in recent settlements for local government.
The Minister recognised the extreme concern of local authorities at meeting the essential needs of vulnerable children and families, that many of them have felt that absolutely have had to cut essential services for those families. Will he keep those particular requirements very much in mind?
My Lords, once again, the noble Lord raises a very, very important point in relation to children's care. He will be aware that this year we did make, again, special provision in the settlement this year, but he is right of the continuing importance of that, and he referenced earlier the Troubled Families Programme, which is important in that regard, my Lords.
My Lords, I refer the House to my relevant registered interest. Would the noble Lord dispute the statement that the top 10 most deprived councils in England are set to see cuts higher than the national average, with 9 on course for cuts more than 3 times higher than the national average? And will the Fair Funding Review address that?
My Lords, on 2 points. First of all, the 10 most deprived areas in England spend on average 22% more on care per household than the 10 least deprived, and I think that's an important statistic in distinction to those that the noble Lord mentioned. But it is important, he is absolutely right, in the fair funding formula that we do look at the needs of particular areas as well as their resources in coming to that settled formula, which we would do later this year, my Lords.
When the noble Lord talks about the deprivation, levels of deprivation, is he taking into account youth services and deprivation in those areas where there are highest numbers of youth crime that we've been talking about a lot in this House and across the country? Surely youth services, which used to be, and I declare an interest, I was a councillor in 2 London boroughs for 16 years, youth services used to be an excellent way of keeping young people occupied and away from crime and antisocial behaviour, and of course community safety officers as well. They've all gone. Is that going to be taken into account?
My Lords, these are factors that are very much in play, and we will be looking at those. It is important, the noble lady is right about youth services. I know in relation to the integration action plan that we're pursuing throughout the country, and particularly in 5 troubleshooting regions, that youth services is something that is given special accent, and that would be additional to what is going through the local government grants, my Lords.
My Lords, several councils have begun to declare climate emergencies, which is to develop a plan which will adapt to and mitigate climate change. And so would the government consider actually giving some sort of allocation for that purpose, which could benefit the whole of the UK?
My Lords, the noble lady, as always, speaks with great experience on the issues of climate change. She will know that this is a policy that tends to be directed quite separately in general terms over and above the local government settlement. Certainly local authorities need to bear these issues in mind, but over and above that, it's something that all responsible local authorities recognise the importance of this, and also, of course, it makes perfect economic sense in many cases, my Lords.
The other week, at last, recognised that there was a link between those areas that voted most heavily for Brexit and deprivation in this country in the derisively small offer she made to a number of Labour MPs for industrial towns. Regardless of what eventually happens on Brexit, do we not need, on a cross-party basis, to have a very substantial long-term commitment to investment publicly in services, infrastructure, education for those deprived parts of the country which feel most neglected?
Yeah. My Lords, first of all, I don't think £1.6 billion could be described as a derisory amount. I mean, that may be mathematics in the Liberal Democrats, but it doesn't seem to be really a true reflection of the amount of that particular programme. And I do have to say to the noble Lord as well that it was for communities that were left behind. It had no necessary causal link with how communities had voted, of course, and many of those communities are in the north of England, which the noble Lord would know, and I think it's an important programme, and as the noble Lord rightly says, we should all get behind it.
Lord Clement-Jones.
My Lords, I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
My Lords, last year the government published the Data Ethics Framework that sets out clear principles and standards for how data is used in the public sector, an important tool guiding the ethical use of algorithms and AI technologies. The government has also recently set up the Centre for Data Ethics and Innovation that will provide independent and expert advice on the governance of data and AI technology. The Centre's first two projects will study the use of data in shaping people's online experiences and the potential for bias in decisions made using algorithms. This work, and the Centre's future work, will play a leading role in ensuring transparency and accountability in the ethical use and design of algorithms.
Now some 53 local authorities, about a quarter of police authorities, are using algorithms in prediction, risk assessment and assistance in decision-making, my Lords. The Centre for Data Ethics, for all its virtues, is not a regulator. The Data Ethics Framework, my Lords, doesn't cover all aspects of algorithms. As the noble Lord will know, it was quite difficult finding a minister to respond to this question, my Lords. Isn't it high time that we actually appointed a minister, as recommended by the Common Science and Technology Committee, my Lords, who is responsible for making sure that standards are set for algorithm use in the public authority and in the public sector, which actually enforces certain principles such as transparency, fairness, audit explainability, and sets up a kite mark, my Lords, so that our citizens are protected, my Lords.
Well, my Lords, I don't think there was any difficulty finding a minister in this House. It was pinned on me at a very early stage to answer the noble Lord's very sensible question. But I think that the point about the Centre for Data Ethics and Innovation, which is going to publish its interim report on algorithms in the summer, so relatively soon, is that it will highlight and look forward across the whole area about what should be done in terms of regulation. That will be one of the things that we expect the Centre to look at. And so the concerns which are genuine, which the noble Lord raised, can be looked at by this forward-looking body.
My Lords, in my friend explain what an algorithm is, and should I be concerned about it?
My Lords, I'm not an expert, but I can. I'm sure that the noble Lord, if I remind him, will go back to his school days and remember in his study of Greek that Euclid, in 300 BC, was producing algorithms. But I think today, which he will remember, was for finding the greatest common divisor of two numbers described in about 300 BC. But essentially, it's a set of rules that precisely defines a sequence of operations and is used in today mainly in computers for calculations and machine learning and artificial intelligence.
My Lords, clearly I must voice the general opinion that has been expressed in other ways in appreciation of the Noble Lord the Minister's reply to a very pernickety friend of his sitting on the bench behind him. We've heard reports of information that will come from the data ethics people in the summer. We have a white paper on online harms coming up very soon, and then a period of consultation. Always I seem stuck at the dispatch box with acknowledging that the answer to the question I really want to ask is going to be coming in months and perhaps years' time. But the Noble Lord who put the question is quite right, that things are happening now in the field of technology, with all those local councils and police forces using algorithms to forecast possible courses of action and take policy decisions in the light of what they think is going to happen. And here we are with consultative experiences about to happen, when and if. And it seems to me that it would be good if the Noble Lord the Minister could somehow bypass and short-circuit the labyrinthine things that are happening elsewhere, and just give us some reassurance that certification for things that are already in the field and shaping our future can be looked at critically, and we can be given reassurance.
Well, I think it's not completely fair to say that nothing's happened, because in areas where personal data is used, for example, that has to be used lawfully under the aegis of the Data Protection Act. And the Information Commissioner recently said she was minded to issue guidelines on the use of data, particularly in respect of children. So the Information Commission is a powerful regulator that is looking at the use of personal data, and under the Digital Economy Act, we set up the data ethics framework. Also allows public bodies to use the data which informs algorithms in a way that is principled and transparent. So I think there is work going on, but I take the Noble Lord's point about that it has to be looked at fairly urgently.
Labour.
Well, it's not actually.
Asking the... My Lord, is the government confident that when the Chancellor asks the Competition and Markets Authority to scrutinise Google and Facebook, that they are applying the same rules of transparency for public services in the UK? Isn't us waiting for an interim report a little bit too late when, for instance, the HEART system used by Durham Police to predict reoffending is already well underway? Does the Minister accept that failure to properly scrutinise these kind of algorithms risks the racial bias revealed by the investigation into the North Point system in Florida?
I do understand there are issues about particularly systems of facial recognition which are basically inaccurate in many terms. But the essential point is that biometric data is classified as a special category of data under the Data Protection Act, and the police and anyone else who uses that has to do it within the law.
Baroness Wheatcroft.
My Lords, I beg leave to put the question standing in my name on the order paper.
My Lords, government departments make use of non-disclosure agreements when structuring engagements with businesses or other organisations on preparations for leaving the EU. They are a common component of contractual arrangements that are used to protect the commercial considerations of the parties involved or to protect sensitivities around the development of government policy. With regard to my department, DEXU, as of mid-January, there were 7 NDAs in place covering standard commercial contracts.
My Lords, I thank my noble friend the Minister for his response. The Government has been rightly critical of the use of NDAs in some cases which have come to light recently. It's crucial that Parliament and the public should have access to all relevant information about the potential costs and risks of Brexit. So could my noble friend the Minister assure the House that the NDAs the government has signed are not keeping important data out of the public domain? At such a pivotal time for the country, business should not be gagged.
Well, I totally agree that business should not be gagged, and many businesses have rightly spoken out on their opinions on Brexit, both for and against. But, my Lords, we've been extremely open about no deal and about the costs of Brexit. We've published 106 technical notices, and there's been extensive debate. There's been lots of economic analyses published. I mean, nobody can say they haven't had all the relevant information.
The government subscribes to the democratic principles of transparency and accountability. Shouldn't there be a rule that government and its agencies do not enter into non-disclosure agreements where public interests are material? And shouldn't pleadings for commercial confidentiality be treated with great scepticism?
I agree with the noble lord that it's important for government to be as transparent as possible. But I mean, some of these contracts cover things like payroll services. These are not an attempt to gag businesses or anything like that. The Comptroller General, head of the National Audit Office, gave evidence to the exiting the EU committee in the other place, and he said that the use of NDAs in these government contracts was entirely appropriate.
My Lord, isn't the government in rather a strange position of preparing to ensure that we can leave with no withdrawal agreement on the 29th of March, while playing down and hiding what it has done to achieve that, and what has been achieved on a reciprocal basis between ourselves and the EU, that planes may fly, that hauliers will have licences, etc., etc. Will he publish a complete list of such arrangements to reassure the House and the country and the other place that we can leave smoothly on the 29th of March without a withdrawal agreement if none is available?
Well, I know the noble lord takes a close interest in these matters, but it remains the case that we don't want to leave with no deal. We don't think that's an advantageous situation. There would be clearly a lot of turbulence if that happened, but we have been open about the consequences. The problem is that the EU will not engage with us on many of the technical preparations that are necessary because they take the view that they have negotiated a withdrawal agreement.
You will find that many in this House have had conversations with businesses who have said to them directly that they cannot describe the impact of Brexit on their business to either politicians or to the public, or speak out openly because they're bound by NDAs that they have signed with the government. Would he go back and look again at these NDAs in some detail, perhaps himself, and put some pressure on his lawyers? Because it's very clear from all those conversations that eventually it will be surfaced and become public, that these are not covering just narrow, commercially sensitive issues. They are stretching far more broadly because the government prefers to keep so many issues secret when they should be transparent.
Good point. I'm afraid I don't agree with the noble lady. She cannot expect me to comment on hearsay or private conversations she might have had. If she gives me specific examples of where these have been used inappropriately, I will of course look at that.
The noble lady, Baroness Wheatcroft, asked about NDAs across the whole of government. Now, the Minister, speaking from the dispatch box in this House, answers for all of government. He has only given us the answer in relation to his department. I wonder if he could answer the noble Baroness's question in full and tell us what the numbers are across the whole of government.
I would love to answer the noble lady, but I simply don't have that information. You'll have to ask other government departments what NDAs they have in place. I can only give the information that I have in front of me. I asked my department what NDAs we have in place and what they were. I will look at the situation and respond in writing if that's appropriate.
Minister, he does answer for the whole of the government when he speaks from the dispatch box, and if his department can't provide the information, they should ask other departments. But I have to say to him, when I listen to his answers, I sometimes think there's a parallel universe in which there's the Prime Minister and some of her ministers, and then there's the rest of us, because most of us have seen what happened in the House of Commons again last night, where they ruled out a no-deal Brexit, and yet here the Minister is talking about no-deal Brexit non-disclosure agreements. It's hard to understand the justifications for the secrecy the government's insisting on. So can I ask the noble Minister, picking up on the point by the noble Lady Baroness Kramer, does the noble lord, does he share the frustrations, does he understand the frustrations of businesses and sectoral bodies subject to these gagging orders, who in many cases are deeply unhappy with the direction of travel, but ultimately are unable to speak out on such a crucial issue?
Well, again, the noble lady is referring to hearsay conversations that she may or may not have. They are not gagging orders. These are standard non-disclosure agreements that were used extensively throughout periods of Labour governments as well. These are not unusual. And many businesses are speaking out on their opinions on Brexit. Everybody has an opinion on Brexit. Believe me, I get a lot of contributions, a lot of letters, a lot of emails from businesses and individuals on the subject of Brexit. Nobody is being gagged.